you feel like a certain sense of responsibility, as someone who's kind of been an advocate and now is an actor, even in your choices that you make, in terms of your projects,
Yeah.
or, what you say on Instagram in terms of, things you say, let's say on a podcast like this, do you feel a sense of like, responsibility?
I think, it's two things. One, of course, there is this pressure that you have to say the right thing. And that's a pressure that came onto me at a very young age, right? Because the entirety of my transition happened when I was what? 17, 18, 19. That's when I started talking about things. And at that age, I feel like you haven't experienced life at all.
Yeah.
Of course, you've been through a lot, and different people from different backgrounds. I come from a lot of privilege, so perhaps I don't get to say. But very personally, I feel like, in retrospect, at 17, I didn't know anything about the world, about myself. And I suddenly became a representative for a community,
Yeah.
which ends up happening because, the trans and queer communities are so underrepresented
Yeah.
that, when finally there's people who are talking about it out and loud, or have the privilege to talk about it out and loud and proud, uh, suddenly you're like, oh my God, everything that I say will be scrutinized and dissected.
Yeah.
And when there's a social element to it, or a social justice element to it, it can be really scary,
Yeah.
to take a stand, right? But I feel like, when it's your own life, you don't have a choice. That perhaps if it's just about trans issues, someone who's not trans has the option to not think about it.
Yeah.
Dude, this is hilarious. Like, sometimes girls will text me saying, my boyfriend of 4 years and I had a fight about you. I'm like, what? And she'll be like, I brought you up and he was against trans people and I had no idea. And I was like,
Wow.
can you imagine someone that you're with for 4 years? This has never come up.
In conversation
In
only, this has never
conversation.
come up.
And that's cis privilege right there.
100%.
Because
100%.
how can I possibly be in a relationship with someone and not talk about it for 4 years?
Yeah.
So, I think those small things people take for granted. But coming back to the responsibility of it, on the one hand, even though it can be hard to constantly represent, even when you're doing your work as an actor, because as an actor, you shouldn't have to constantly think about the messaging of everything, right?
Correct.
That can be restricting. Because as an actor, your job is to act.
And this is not true for all other actors, na?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And I, as a trans person, constantly feel like, oh, I might be held responsible for just doing my job as an actor,
Yeah.
which is very unfair. Because, I would like to play problematic characters, yeah?
Yeah.
I would like to play characters who say the wrong thing, who do the wrong thing. So long as the overarching theme and the script and the narrative aligns with my politics, then I'm fine with it. But I don't want to constantly be playing characters who are very like high horsey about, saying the right thing.
Righteous, yeah.
And I think on the one hand there is responsibility, but on the other hand it is one of the biggest privileges of my life to have an audience of young people, between ages like 18 and 25, right? Such a community of young queer and trans people that I would have never known, never learned from, never been inspired by had I not shared my story.
What is the sweetest message that you got?
The sweetest message. So there was this one person that was like, Trinetra, you were singing in a story, you were singing like Kuch To Log Kahenge or something. And I showed it to my grandmom, and she's this very conservative woman, and she heard it. She was like, oh, how sweet. She has a heavy voice. How come? And she sort of like gave her this story, and she was like, oh my God, I didn't know that trans people can be normal, quote unquote. And
because
while
our
that
representation is so poor, that's why.
Correct. And, of course, using words like normal, abnormal can be problematic. But yeah, imagine like there are old people out there that your content can reach through whatever way. And that blew my mind. I was like, I was just doing Bakchodi, can I say Bakchodi?
Yeah. You were doing Bakchodi.
Yeah, I was doing Bakchodi on a story, and it reached somebody who suddenly realized that this community can be filled with people that they can relate to.
Yeah.
So that was very sweet. There was this other message by a parent of a trans child who said that your content has helped us being better parents. So I think those messages always hit very hard.
I think that's so important though for young children and parents of young children, you know,
Yeah.
the fact that today they have the opportunity to consume content, let's say from someone like you, so that, you know, they understand what their child is going through because we have no reference points.
Correct.
Right? Like
Yeah.
as you said, 4 years somebody didn't even discuss
In a
this-
relationship,
in
man.
a relationship, you didn't discuss this at all. So
Yeah.
these are not points of discussion that ordinarily you have sitting across a dinner table, clearly.
You don't.
And you know, then for young parents, I think it's so important to have conversations like these amongst themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
so if at all the child is going through anything,
Yeah.
and it could be any journey of discovery, you know, then it can just make them a little more aware.
Fully. Because look, at the end of the day, we're not taught this stuff in schools. We're not taught this stuff on television and entertainment. So, like, where is it going to come from? I'm so glad, you know, trans and queer content creators
Yeah.
are putting their lives out there, man. It's unfortunately, you know, you have to become the representation that you didn't have.
Yeah.
And that's where
It's
it
true.
is. So,
It's very true. But, you know, we were talking about it, and I think I texted you, and as we were having this conversation that you and I are going to sit and have this chat
Yeah.
together, my sister, who's an artist,
Okay.
you know, she loves painting the Ardhanareshwar. Like, she's
Yeah,
done
yeah,
it now
yeah.
a few times, and I think she does a good job of it. So,
Hmm.
she had made one version, it was just sitting there. And I saw it,
Yeah.
and I just thought of you. And then I
You're
also
so sweet, man. Oh my God.
and I also thought of the fact that, you know, so much in Indian mythology,
Yeah.
whether it's Shikandi or, you know,
Yeah.
this, has existed, you know, in our temples, in our history.
Yeah.
And yet we are so hypocritical about our acceptance of it, you know.
It's bizarre. Oh my God. I feel like, you know, India is full of contradictions, no? Like that. Much as I love being an Indian woman, sometimes it's like, you know, why don't we acknowledge our own culture first?
Yeah.
Why don't we acknowledge our own mythology and history and know where we come from and then argue, right?
Yeah.
Because to say that something is Western culture that has come to India and is now ruining us is so bizarre. Have you been to a temple in Khajuraho and seen what people are doing in those carvings, you know?
Yeah.
Have you read anything from the Kama Sutra?
Yeah.
Have you, say, read an author like Devdutt Patnaik,
Yeah.
who writes about Indian mythology and the queerness in it extensively?
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to just, I don't know, Google search, yeah?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I chose my name, which is Trinetra, is because as a Bengali woman, Durga Puja was very, very important to us, right? To me in particular, because I didn't grow up in Calcutta or in Bengal, but my mom is Bengali.
Yeah.
So Pujo was that time that, you know, the stories of like Durga being a fierce feminine energy, we were told that story again and again. And for me, my womanhood needed to represent that fierceness. And Trinetra is a name for both Shiva and Parvati, right? So it sort of stands for that little bit of gender neutrality
Yeah.
in our culture. So yeah, that's how it happened.